What's happening, everybody? Hopefully you're awake. Depending on when you watch this, you maybe woke up and didn't watch the end of Game Three of the 2025 World Series because we are going to be talking about one of the greatest baseball games that maybe I've ever seen. And here I was. I thought that hey, Dodgers played an 18 inning game against the Red Sox 7 years ago. We'll talk about the symmetry of the moment. We saw a 15 inning game where the Seattle Mariners, in a do or die scenario, the Seattle Mariners beat the Detroit Tigers. But what we saw in game three of the World Series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Toronto Blue Jays was about as exhausting and as, you know, I don't know if you can say cathartic. This was as exhilarating of a sporting event as you're going to find. And, obviously, I have, my friend, one of my best friends in the world, Danny Udelf, is a big Toronto Blue Jays fan. I live in Los Angeles. I've been to many Dodger games. There's a lot of Cleveland Guardians. I've talked about my ties to both these teams going in, but even as an impartial party, and you had no vested interest in that. Well, obviously, I feel gutted for the Toronto Blue Jays fan base because somebody had to lose this game, and that's the sad part about sports and just about baseball. But if you were just an objective sports fan, that had to be one of the great sporting events that you've ever seen. It would not end. There was great pitching. There was great defense. There was incredible performances offensively from Shohei Ohtani. And it's all capped off by a walk-off home run by guess who? The guy who did it last year in game one of the World Series, the first game that they played in Dodger Stadium, and Freddie Freeman now owns two walk-offs in Dodger history. And I think there's only been three men in Dodgers history that have walked off in the World Series, if I'm not mistaken. But this was such a great baseball game. And then we'll also have to talk about, there's confounding decisions. I think John Schneider needs to fairly be questioned for some of the decisions that he made, some of which, he had to make because, he's trying to win a game. Also, he lost his leadoff man before extra innings we even got there. George Springer was out of the game because he pulled his oblique on a swing, and that was unfortunate for the Blue Jays. And I think that set the wheels in motion for what transpired in the later innings, where the Blue Jays just fucking couldn't get a base runner. And it was ironically in the 18th inning, they had runners on second and third. And at the top of my look, obviously Freddie Freeman is going to get so many of the headlines because he hit the walk-off. He ended this game. But can we give some love to Will Klein? Will Klein, a guy who wasn't even on the fucking roster prior to the World Series, was a late ad. Everybody's like, oh, okay. Will Klein wins this game throwing 4 innings, allowing 1 hit, 5 strikeouts, 72 pitches. I know he's not going to win World Series MVP if the Dodgers win this World Series, but you might as well give that guy a fucking gift basket and everything, because that was, given the circumstances and given that the Dodgers had nobody else to go to. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who threw a complete game in game 2 days ago, was getting ready to come in for the 19th inning. The Dodgers had nobody left. And this guy threw 70 pitches against a vaunted Toronto Blue Jays lineup. Granted, it was depleted because there were certain changes that were made. And threw 1 hit shutout ball in extra innings when the Dodgers had nowhere else to go. The vaunted or the dreaded bullpen that the Dodgers had was able to spread across, like Emmett Sheehan. Like, look at this. They only gave up the runs that they gave up. They had, I'm looking across the thing. So there was 4 runs. The last run that was given up in this game by the Dodgers was Blake Trinan, who only pitched a third of an inning and threw 15 pitches. Everything else beyond that the Dodgers had to pick up, they picked up somehow, some way. And Will Klein, I think, is at the head of that because that guy almost pitched longer than the starting pitcher of this game in Tyler Glasnow, who went 4 2/3. That is seriously an unbelievable performance. Tyler Glasnow at the start of this game threw 85 pitches. So again, Freddie Freeman is going to get every ounce of love. Also, shout out Clayton Kershaw coming in a bases loaded jam and getting one out, which was a really important out. So many heroic performances. Eric Lauer on the Toronto Blue Jays side. There was a lot of just, heroic efforts. Alejandro Kirk had a 3-run home run that seemed like a lifetime ago. But again, what we're going to talk about, obviously, is the walk-off home run. Freddie Freeman, of course, it had to be Freddie Freeman. To me, once it got to the 18th inning, I was like, okay, it's going to either be Freddie Freeman or Max Muncy that has to end this game. Freddie Freeman being Canadian, being the guy who ended a World Series game last year on a walk-off, or Max Muncy, who is the other guy active on this roster who has a walk-off home run in the World Series, as a walk-off in the World Series. It's really, it's unbelievable, man. Like, this is, and like I said, at the top of the video, I hate it for the Blue Jays fans. I hate it for this organization who fought tooth and nail to get to this spot. Being a 94-win team, they had home field advantage. They played a really great game. A lot of great defensive plays. Tommy Edman had a great throwout. He had an error. He got himself redeemed in this game. You had some boneheaded defensive plays and base running mistakes. Like, this game had fucking everything. But obviously at the top of the list, Freddie Freeman's the hero. Shohei Ohtani, by the way, has not been recorded out. The guy's walked or been or hit a home run or had an extra base hit basically in the last 2 games that he's had at Dodger Stadium. By the way, that guy's the starting pitcher. Shohei Ohtani, by the way, I think is 7 for 7. And I think he had 4 intentional walks and then had another intentional walk in the 17th inning. But he's 7 for 7 with 5 home runs in his last 2 games at Dodger Stadium. Shohei Ohtani is the greatest baseball player ever. Freddie Freeman has made himself. He already was a Hall of Famer for all the stuff he did with all the stuff he did with his historic career and his great career with the Atlanta Braves, and now here in his 4th season with the Dodgers, he's now got 2 walk-off home runs in the World Series, including a walk-off grand slam. So, man, for Toronto, man, listen, listen, Max Scherzer pitched pretty well, gave up 3 earned runs. He had the lead. Mason Fluharty only got 1 out in this game. Louis Varland. Sir Anthony Dominguez gave up. Chris Bassett, Jeff Hoffman. Eric Lauer went 4 2/3. Braden Fisher. Brendan Little again giving up a big spot. He did it against the Mariners in the last series. But John Schneider is going to get questioned to death. If we're going to talk about, heroes, we got to talk about some goats. John Schneider, I understand his hands were tied, especially with the George Springer situation. Ty France had to come into the game in the middle of an at-bat. Then they bring in Davis Schneider. He gets gunned down at the plate in a really just a mind-numbingly stupid send, which I think that was in regulation innings. And, we had a similar situation where Freddie Freeman got gunned down at the plate as well. So the Davis Schneider thing, which really was on the third base coach, but, pinch hitting Alejandro Kirk in the 12th inning, which I did not get. I know you're trying to score a run. Alejandro Kirk, outside of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., is the best hitter. George Springer's out of the game. He's probably your most clutch hitter and your most experienced guy. Pulling Alejandro Kirk out of the game, who wasn't getting out, and bringing in Heineman. I can't even give you the guy's name. I'll give you his name. Tyler Heineman, who relatively little used catcher. It didn't make any sense to me. And Addison Barger, who had a really good game, he got out of this game. And it's just, some really head scratching decisions that I think cost Toronto this game. And they're going to be thinking about this for a long time if they don't win the World Series. Because like I said, that is a gut punch to, go to 18 innings and, you had a 4-2 lead. You also had a 5-4, I think you had a 5-4 lead. And then you pitch to Shohei Ohtani. He gives up home run. You give up home runs to him. And then, you make some head scratching decisions within your lineup. Obviously, I told my friend this, the George Springer thing, and we don't know how healthy if he's going to be healthy for the rest of the series. Um, that I think set the wheels in motion for a lot of decisions that maybe John Schneider didn't want to make. But like I said, the biggest decision that I think really might have cost the Blue Jays this game is that Alejandro Kirk was not in this game beyond the 12th inning. I just don't get it. I don't get how you put basically your second best hitter, maybe third, depending on who you talk to, like with George Springer as well, but your second best hitter as the game was currently constructed, and you took him out of the game. I don't know. But Dodger pitching was unbelievable. The bullpen, which was terrible for them for most of this, Enriquez came in, Clayton Kershaw gotten out, Emmett Sheehan was a little bit bumpy. Roki Sasaki, Dreyer gave him a third of an inning. Like, yeah, Blake Trinan, Robleski, he gave him, Bonda gave him an out. Like I said, this was tailor made, and the reason why I think this really hurts for Toronto. Once Tyler Glasnow didn't get through the fifth inning, you knew that the Dodgers were going to be in trouble. And the fact that the Blue Jays didn't win this game and they had to use their shaky bullpen to get to it, whoever lost this game was going to be screwed. But the Blue Jays, they had all these advantages to them and they couldn't win this game. That's the biggest thing. So if I'm pointing to heroes, sentimentally, you'll obviously, talk about Clayton Kershaw. That might be the last out that he ever records. And he does it in Game 3 of the World Series to save effectively the game for the Dodgers with the bases loaded. Will Klein, obviously, at the top of the list. Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. And man, if Yoshinobu Yamamoto got into that game, that would have been a ballsy move. I'm glad we didn't see it because, hey, they may need him for Game 6 when we get to that point. So, because Blake Snell is going to throw in Game 5, and, obviously we're going to have Shohei Ohtani tomorrow in Game 4. Man, I could talk about this game for hours and days. But if you guys haven't gotten a chance to go back and watch the highlights. This was one of the greatest baseball games that I've ever watched. Postseason baseball is just fucking great. And even if it was 2 o'clock, it was nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. In Toronto or on the East Coast, wherever you were, if it was a different day worldwide in Tokyo or whatever, this was a treat. Thank you to the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. Somebody unfortunately had to lose. Somebody unfortunately was going to get their decisions put under a microscope, but the Dodgers win. It's Freddie Freeman doing it again, and they are now 2 wins away from back-to-back world championships. And we'll have to see how the rest of the series goes because that was going to be a tough act to follow. Anyway, I'll see you guys. Oh, and one more thing before I go. The symmetry of how this game ended. It was no outs, 3-2 count, 18th inning, and Max Muncy hit the home run 7 years ago to beat the Boston Red Sox. 3-2 count, nobody out, nobody on base. And Freddie Freeman hit it out of the stadium. By the way, Will Smith almost hit one, and Teoscar Hernandez, we thought, hit out of the stadiums. That was the other part of this. So many times this game could have ended, and it didn't. So, what a treat, man. What a treat. If you're still awake, if you're a Dodger fan, if you can't sleep, or if you are drowning your sorrows, if you're a Blue Jays fan, man. These are sometimes I'm just glad that, I don't have emotional investment, like in terms of like if it's a Guardians game, I probably would have been, even losing my shit even more than, obviously, like I said, I'm invested in the Dodgers just because, hey, hometown, I grew up here. I've lived here virtually my whole life, and I followed this team my whole life. But yeah, what a treat. What a game. What a season. And we'll see how the rest of the series goes. Anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.